Hey everyone, my name is Matt Gonzalez and I'm the Senior PM here at GitLab for the compliance group. I wanted to take a moment to just record some thoughts about this concept of compliance pipeline configurations, I guess affectionately and colloquially referred to as forced includes. We've been making a lot of progress on improving that experience greatly, bringing it to the group level, and have a roadmap to still address some of the instance level pain points for our regulated customers. But I wanted to stop, breathe, share with everyone sort of the holistic view of how these various pieces fit together, and just in hopes of making sure everyone's on the same page, aligned, and has a good sense or understanding of how it all works, and therefore then the end goal and the outcome we want to achieve. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so this is the very lengthy and complex epic that we started off with. But to summarize, what we'd like to achieve is the ability for a regulated enterprise compliance team to create a compliance pipeline configuration in some group and project that they control, which helps with separation of duties, helps with the general control of that configuration, and gives them the reassurances they need that anytime a change is pushed to production and whenever an auditor comes by asking for evidence of this SDLC process, that they can sufficiently provide that and with confidence knowing that it wasn't circumvented or bypassed in a regular or routine way. So this compliance team creates that compliance configuration and we'll call it Group A Compliance Project A. The developer then creates their own local configuration in, we'll call it Group B, Developer Project B. And through the use of our custom compliance labels, which I'll come back to here in a second, they'll be able, the group owners of this group for now will be able to specify this compliance pipeline configuration location. And so what happens is when the developer wants to make a change, at runtime, their pipeline will combine both this compliance configuration and their local configuration. And so the dynamics that exist there took me some time to wrap my head around. And so I had somewhat of an epiphany today, thanks to Tim Poffenbarger. And so I wanted to share that in particular as we embark on one of the issues that's part of this epic in the compliance group. So to touch on how this will link together, the use of our compliance labels, which we're in the process of evolving to be customizable, in part for this reason, but also for other value adds that we'll cover in a separate video. But adding this field to define a compliance pipeline configuration location, and that's a mouthful. So hopefully we can wordsmith that. But the intent is to be able to show where the location is of this compliance pipeline configuration. And so as a group owner, I can create this SOX project label, or this SOX compliance label rather. And then as a group owner, I can go apply that to a project. And in our example, it was Group B, Developer Project B. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say that is the project I'm going to apply this label to. Well, once that's applied, we'll have this read-only field that shows to the project maintainer or anyone else who has view rights to this, here's the location where this mandatory include exists. It is often this other group in this other project maintained by some other team. Now, this is all well and known and understood by our customers' users, and so I don't think there's any issue there. This is primarily just to give them visibility so that when they see it manifest in the pipeline, they'll know ideally where that's coming from and how that affects their local project. So that's how we plan to use the customizable compliance labels to be able to create that relationship. The other things that are, the other issues that we have to tackle are making sure that we support variables in the include section of CI YAML config. And that's in reference to this key here, where we can include other files into the configuration. So right now that's not supported and would have to be. I believe Jackie Porter's group is working on refining this to then implement. So we're collaborating with them. So I think we may not need to deal with that for now. But the follow-up to that is in creating this new variable sorry, let me back up for a second. So in the include, we want to be able to support these variables. So that's step one, just having the support in general. But step two is in making sure that we have this additional variable that does not yet exist today. So we would create that and have that point to the config path, the CI config path for a project. And so when we create our compliance pipeline configuration, we'll be able to say, I want to include, and keep in mind, this is the example include portion of the compliance YAML. We want to include the GitLab CI YAML file from the project that is compiling this combined configuration. And so in our compliance YAML file that's managed separately by a compliance team, after we've implemented the support of variables in the include section, the addition of this new variable, and after implementing this new field in the customizable compliance labels, we'll then be able to configure this and then have it function in the way that our customers need it to function. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, how we're moving forward on that proposal. Now, the conversation I had with Tim today dealt with, let me share a different screen. So it dealt with the dynamics of how those files are combined. Like that was basically just magic as far as I was concerned. So I had a great conversation with Tim, and he walked me through the dynamics, which I think are really helpful to understand, especially as we look to tackle one of those CI issues. So in our compliance YAML, let's say that we've defined this really basic configuration. We've defined a global variables key, and we have the include. Just ignore this syntax for now. Just assume that we're using one from the proposal. We define these stages, and then we have a SAS job. And in that SAS job, we define a script. So that is what we want to run in all of our regulated projects as the compliance team from some org. Well, we spin up a project, and in that project, we define this really simple GitLab CI YAML file. So in here, we define this SAS job that I don't want to say conflicts, but is duplicative of the compliance one. So in the compliance one, you can see it's fairly simple. We have the SAS var up in variables. I believe the default stage for this is test. And then we define some really basic script that just prints out this statement of running that global variable. Well, when the local project, the developer, creates a YAML file, if they explicitly define this variables key or this variable section with a SAS var key and value of this string here, it is being explicitly defined as part of that job. And they're also explicitly defining the build stage for this job. So when these two files are combined, my understanding of what happens is we're now left with this combined YAML file. The global variables section, the stages that were defined, but then in the SAS job, we see this explicitly defined SAS var, which will take precedence over the global one, as I understand it. And the stage being explicitly defined means this will no longer run in test, this will run in the build stage. But you see that the script remains the same as what was in the compliance definition. So we see here running SAS var, but in the local one, it was just, echo compiling. But then when we look at the combined one, echo compiling is not there because this was explicitly defined in the compliance pipeline configuration. So that's where we are today. My understanding is that although this is an odd behavior in terms of this particular use case or problem space, it is workable to say that if you do not want this behavior to exist, then you should be explicitly defining these keys and values as part of your job definitions, which I believe is considered best practice anyway. So just want you all to be aware of that. And as a somewhat related note, I'll go back to sharing this other screen. One of the concerns that had originally arisen as part of the forced includes paradigm was this idea that developers had no possible way to circumvent this process in the event of an emergency. We don't want our customers to have a production environment that stays down because they can't go in and fix something because of this compliance pipeline configuration that's trying to control, I guess, the compliance requirements, right? So we have an emergency fix we have to deploy, but we can't do it because we have all these steps we have to go through. And so as a quick side note, this is a large motivator behind why we were moving forward with the discovery on the two-person approvals for objects instead of settings, because what this would allow us to do, as I think Austin has done a great job of leading on this front, but we'd be able to bypass and merge a problematic or a merge request process so that we can say, I have this emergency fix that has to go out. I cannot afford to wait for X, Y, Z, et cetera, jobs to run as part of this compliance process. So I need to just go ahead and bypass this whole thing and merge it, similar to as if you were merging straight to master. When we talk about some of the safeguards that we'll need to have in place for this, this is why, well, like, we know that customers have on-call engineers or what they call incident managers who are available to take and authorized to take this exact kind of action. So what we're providing is a very simple, intuitive, and native way for them to achieve that outcome without having to go and disable a bunch of settings or tweak a bunch of things to be able to then merge this change and then make sure they go back and re-enable all of those standard settings or configurations. And as another part of this is we'll be able to then document things like who requested this bypass and merge, why was it requested, who was the person who came in with the authority to then merge that, and we can manifest that all in a GitLab issue that serves as an evidence artifact, and we can surface these insights in the merge request widget itself. So this is the escape hatch that I think we can continue to iterate on, that provides developers an ability to bypass and merge, even though this compliance pipeline exists, because that type of action should be fairly infrequent, as has been confirmed by the customers we've spoken with about these solutions, or proposals rather. But it should also be making easier a process that already exists, but now we're supporting it natively within GitLab. So hopefully this was helpful and informative from a context perspective and background on this larger compliance pipeline configuration initiative, and also giving some background to some other issues that we're working on that may not have made as much sense without this particular presentation. So let me know if you have any comments or feedback in any of those issues or in Slack, and thanks for watching.